students, welcome to the series on business environment. The topic of this lecture is components of business environment in continuation with the last lecture. In the last lecture, we discussed at length the natural and demographic environment. In this lecture, we will talk about the international environment and the impact of international environment on the business. We know that international environment is the part of macro environment and macro environment is the part of external business environment. So, the business has no control over it. For the smooth functioning of the business, it should analyze and understand the various changes in the international environment and frame the business strategies and policies according to the changes to stay longer in the market. Globalization is the buzzword for the rapid growth of Indian economy. Thanks to the industrial policy of 1991, which emphasized on globalization, privatization and liberalization, that today we are the leading economy amongst the developing countries. The picture of Indian economy is far better than what it was a decade ago. India's accomplishments in trade and commerce have developed a feeling of pride amongst all the Indians. The techno-savvy new generation and the affluent, ambitious, hard-working and educated Indian entrepreneurs are ready to conquer the world. The older torch bearers have relinquished the reign of commerce and industry to the young generation and are self-assured that the country and country's economy is in the safe hands. Now let's discuss the international environment and its impact on the business in detail. Before the industrial policy of 1991, most of the industries were in control of the public sector. Bureaucracy was the major problem that time. The private sector had the zeal to contribute to the rapid growth of the Indian economy, but it was pushed away from doing so on the terms of complicated licensing procedure, lack of support and funds from the government. Protection of domestic industries and handicraft were thought to be possible only when it was in direct control of the public sector. But the government later realized that keeping things under complete control and pushing aside the private sector will not help the Indian economy to grow at a rapid pace. So the government encouraged the private sector to contribute to the nation's economy. The government also opened the doors for foreign direct investment. It liberalized the licensing procedure for imports and exports. Yet the government kept some of the sectors like the railways under its complete control. Still, the platform provided by the government to the private sector was sufficient for the Indian economy to witness the growth rate at the rate of 8% during the years 2003 and 4. Because of the liberalization, the Indian economy has become more prone to react to the international business events. Like the global financial crisis, before the industrial policy of the year 1991, when the imports were restricted, the Indian economy was confined to the internal economic events only. Now let's talk about the dependence of the Indian economy and Indian businesses and industry on the international environment. Due to the liberalization of Indian economy, the number of global alliances, mergers and acquisitions have increased. It made it inevitable for the Indian business houses to take the strategic business decisions based on the global perspective. Because if they neglect the global perspective, then they will not be able to stay longer in the market. Also, they will not be able to contribute to the Indian economy. When we talk about the Indian education industry, the Indian education industry has already reached the global level. The Indian students want to study the best business practices adopted by the developed countries, and the students from other countries are interested in knowing the Indian business practices. This has created a need for the Indian B schools to amend their curricula, which should be based on the knowledge of business trends, practices and philosophies adopted by the foreign countries. This requires greater faculty exchange to share the views, thoughts, and problems. Dual degree programs for exchange of education amongst different countries, student exchange programs are gaining importance nowadays. Students and faculty members are invited for various conferences and seminars held in different countries to share their views on any burning topic in the economy or the sector in the host country. This brings the education community together, and together the academicians and students can make a global change. Students through student exchange programs get to visit the different countries, and they can practically experience the business practices there and learn different languages and cultures. Meanwhile, they may also share their cultural and business practices with the students of the host country. Greater appreciation of cultural diversity is the need of hour for the growth of Indian economy. Indian managers are required to learn the cross-cultural basics. The Indian managers should be thorough with the art of negotiating with the different foreign traders. Indian managers should thrive to adopt the best table and boardroom manners. In this way, they can make the country feel proud when they represent India in different countries. In this way, through the better brand image of India abroad, Indian managers will be able to acquire the vast offshore funds for the country at low rate of interest and easy and flexible repayment options. This will happen because of the Indian brand image carried by the Indian managers abroad through their good manners that the foreign country businessmen will not hesitate to promote and support the Indian businesses. In order to withstand the foreign competition, it is important for the Indian business houses to ensure better quality products. They should ensure high productivity and flexible manufacturing so that the products may be designed and changed as per the taste and preferences of the foreign customers. Just like the taste and preferences of the Indian customers, the taste and preferences of the foreign customers keep on changing, and it is very important for the business to understand the taste and preferences of the foreign buyers. The business should be aware of the trade policy in the foreign country to stay longer in the international market. Now let's continue this lecture with the discussion of dependence of the business on international environment. The international business arena requires the manpower to match the specific business needs. For this, the Indian business houses should retain the best business brains by offering best working conditions and compensation. The most common example here are the call centers. The call centers of multinational companies like Ericsson and Nokia are established in India. These multinational companies have their operations outsourced to India, where best brains are retained through providing compensation or educational benefits to the employees so that they can perform at their best. The multinational companies get the expertise as well as cost benefit on operation through such call centers established in India. Moreover, the business operation is carried on for 24 hours a day, and time difference of the countries create no problem. So, the customer sitting in any part of the world can get their issues resolved at any time. So, there is a gradual shift to higher end work and greater value addition is achieved through this. Through mutual agreements and arrangements, the business of different countries contribute to their respective economies by assuring maximum customer satisfaction. Globalization has encouraged value-driven export of agriculture, horticulture, and floriculture. Quality has replaced quantity. For example, if a single rose can help in earning more foreign exchange than a sack of wheat, then this kind of business should be encouraged. Food grains should be imported from the countries which has the surplus of the same. That is, the need and requirement should be matched with the high production to ensure balance. In order to maximize the return on our investment and resources, the high value export items that can fetch exponentially higher returns should be encouraged. Initiatives should be taken by the government to strengthen trade links with regional trading blocs, but compliance with the guidelines of WTO should be assured. Our country's natural resources and intellectual capital can create wonders. Our economists and academicians, along with the young politicians who are educated and committed to the growth of our nation's economy, must discuss and find out ways and means to make the best use of these assets. This is how the business is dependent on the international environment. International trade is carried out between two countries. So, the different countries' expertise should be used to make maximum profit by ensuring high quality services and products to the customers. So, when we talk about the trade between two different countries, then it is understood that the political and economic environment of the respective countries will influence the functioning and performance of the business between the two countries. The effects of international environment may be felt deep on the businesses because other components of macro environment which we discussed earlier were confined to our country only. But the effects of international environment are felt not only on the trade and commerce but the political environment of the different countries. Amicable political and trade relationships should be established between the different countries. The countries with high terrorism rate and unfriendly relationship with the other countries are generally not preferred for trade because there is always a fear of uncertainty and insecurity. So, this was how the business is dependent on the international environment. Now, let's talk about the features or components of the international environment. The various components of international environment are globalization, international institutions, international agreements, international terrorism, cultural exchange and global financial crisis. To begin with, let's talk about the first feature of international environment, that is the globalization. Liberal trade policies in India have given a platform to the businesses to conduct their operations at the global level. This has resulted in exchange of goods, services, technology, manpower, capital and education amongst different countries. International environment is significant for the industries dealing in import and export. Industries depending on export may be adversely affected by the recession in foreign market or the protection policy imposed by the foreign country. Liberalization may be favorable or unfavorable for different industries. For instance, when LG and Samsung entered the Indian market, the domestic market share of Indian electronic product manufacturing giant Videocon was adversely affected. Whereas the positive impact of liberalization is the increased productivity and efficiency of the Indian domestic industrial units through the import of technology, capital, goods and raw materials. The next feature of international environment is the international institutions. The international institutions and the policies of such institutions like the WTO, IMF and World Bank influence the functioning and performance of the businesses. These institutions provide funds to the businesses to carry out their operations and to promote trade. In this way, the economies of the nations are dependent on the policies of these international institutions. WTO or the World Trade Organization basically deals with the rules of trade between the nations at a global or near global level. WTO is a place where member governments go to sort out the trade problems they face with each other. Through General Agreement on Tariff and Trade or GATT, countries negotiates to overcome the barriers of trade, whereas some barriers are imposed to protect the consumers against diseases. Currently, it has 153 member countries. The International Monetary Fund, or the IMF, is the organization that promotes international monetary cooperation and exchange rate stability. It facilitates the balanced growth of international trade. It also provides resources to help the member countries in the balance of payment difficulties or to assist with poverty reduction. In this way, IMF promotes economic stability by ensuring global economic growth. Currently, it has 187 members. The World Bank is the international financial institution established with the goal to reduce poverty and to promote foreign investment, international trade, and to facilitate the capital investment in the world. It provides loan to developing countries to carry out the trade practices. The World Bank functions through two institutions. These institutions are the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, or the IBRD, and the International Development Association, or IDA. The functions and working of these international institutions is worth understanding for the economists and managers. We will study these international institutions in detail later. The other feature of international environment is the international agreements. We have understood that the international institutes influence the trade of the country. Hence, the policies and agreements by these institutions affect the performance and functioning of the businesses engaged in import and export. For example, Gulf War and the formation of OPEC, or Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, has adversely affected the fertilizer, textile and automobile industries because of the increase in oil prices. So, these international agreements and declaration has a global impact on the economies and business conditions, as well as the sentiments of the citizens of different countries. The next feature of international environment is the international terrorism. International political factors like political tension, war or riots adversely affect the functioning of the businesses. For example, terrorist attack on World Trade Center in USA has adversely affected the performance of the businesses. Its impact are still felt, and it has destroyed the international peace. For the rapid growth of economy, countries should not engage in wars and terrorism and should maintain friendly relationship with the other countries. The next feature of international environment is the cultural exchange. Through fastest means of communication like internet and television, the cross-border spread of culture is taking place, which is resulting in rapid change in the taste and preferences of the customers. For example, the Indian customers are following the fashion trends of the Western countries. Transportation, technology and communication are helping the businesses in different countries to meet the taste and requirements of the consumers in other countries. Learning of foreign culture, language and foreign currency is must for the Indian managers for the success of their businesses. The next feature of international environment is global financial crisis. The financial crisis in USA resulted in shutting down of business operations of the major banks and resulted in global economic slowdown. The markets crashed because of this. In this way, international environment results in free flow of foreign technology and increased foreign investment and foreign trade. So, the study of international environment is very important for the managers and the economists, because on the basis of international environment and the changes in international environment, the business strategies are framed. So, students, now you know the various components influencing the business. Let's have a quick review at all these components which affect the business. The business environment is divided into internal and external environment. The internal environment is subdivided into capital, human resources, business objectives, management policies, commitment of human resources, internal work environment, brand image, labor management relationship, research and development base, and promotional strategies. Business has complete control over the internal environment. The external environment is subdivided into macro and micro environment. The components of micro environment are customers, suppliers, intermediaries, competitors, and public. The macro environment is subdivided into various factors. These factors are economic environment, political environment, socio-cultural environment, technological environment, natural environment, demographic environment, and international environment. Business has some control over the micro-environmental factor, but business has no control over the macro-environmental factors. All the components of business influence the business either positively or negatively. So, it is important for the business to analyze and understand the various changes in these environments. These environmental factors keep providing the opportunities as well as threat to the business. If the business is flexible in changing the strategies and is adaptable to the changes, then the opportunities can be used positively. Similarly, keeping an eye on the changing environmental factors can help the business protect itself against the threat of the external environment, and the business can make necessary changes beforehand to stay longer in the market. The business should aim at building its brand image through providing high quality goods and services to the customers and maintain good relationship with the parties influencing the business. In this way, business can safeguard itself to a great extent against the negative impact of the external environment affecting the business. The business should keep the natural calamities in mind as it has no control over it. The business unit should be set up keeping in mind the geographical factors. If natural calamity occurs, business should beforehand have some fund available with it to use it at that time. Business should support the government during the time of natural calamity by voluntarily working for the citizens. Business should always fulfill its social responsibility part. Business should strictly comply with the laws set up by the government for conducting the business. Business ethics should be highly promoted by the business. Because of its natural beauty, India is the center of attraction for the tourist, and thus tourism industry contributes a lot to the Indian economy. Business can make use of these natural resources, but it should keep in mind the preservation and protection of the natural heritage. In this way, through analyzing and understanding the various components of business environment, the business can make the changes in the business strategies and policies according to the changes in these environmental factors. In this way, the business can win over the heart of the customers and can stay longer in the market. Thank you, students.